Shalom. I would like to describe more reasons why I'm very upset about the case of Yitzhak Keshet, the mayor of Harish, who was arrested and detained in jail for 3 months, and then temporarily removed from being mayor of Harish. And the reason I'm so upset about this is because I believe it's an instance of a criminal justice system which is not functioning properly, and of a police investigation unit which is not functioning properly as it should in a well-balanced democracy. And as someone who cares about Israel and cares about how the government works here, it's very distressing to me. Let me share a few points with you. In America, where I grew up, if you want to detain someone in jail, you need a good reason. And that comes from constitutional guarantees on people's freedom that are part of the U.S. Constitution and its history of civil rights and protecting people's rights. In Israel, we have less of those rights enshrined in law. And as a result, or I don't know if that's the cause, but the reality is that oftentimes people are detained for long periods of time without good reason. And in this instance of Mayor Keshet, so some of the reasons they tried to use to justify were these. They said, first of all, he's dangerous. Okay, he said he's dangerous. He was being charged with in the end, they charged him after 3 weeks. They charged him with five minor offenses, such as indecent acts, etc. Five women said they're claiming that he did things at different times over a period of like 4 years. But they were claiming that he's dangerous to the women of Harish and to the community at large. I find that ridiculous. I don't see what the danger here was. I mean, if these things are true, which is doubtful, and even if they are, so he's dangerous because he hugged someone in his office. That makes him dangerous. I don't see the danger in that. Another poor excuse they used to hold him in detention is they said that he might or was interfering with the investigation. What was the interfering with the investigation? So according to this article, which I think everyone should read and we should translate it to English, this article in Walla News from May 18th of this year, 2025. So here Yoav ATL has an article where he actually interviewed the people from the police who investigated him. And in this article, they say that the things that he did to interfere with the investigation included having people contact these people who were contacting him, trying to convince them not to speak, giving small gifts to their children. These major interference with the investigation, which if they wanted to actually stop, they didn't have to keep him under arrest. They simply could have made a restraining order, said you are not allowed to contact any of these people. That would have solved the problem perfectly well. But of course, they wanted to keep him in jail because that was all part of breaking him down, in my opinion. Another reason they said is that afterwards, after they actually finished the investigation and charged him after 3 weeks, they kept him in for another 3 months, another 2 months, 2.25 months, by saying, well, we should keep him to the end. The Praklitud got involved, the Praklitud, which I also am very disappointed with and very, very, very suspicious of. The Praklitud, the state prosecutor's office, in the Haifa district, they said, well, we don't want him to get involved. We don't want him to interfere with the judicial process now. So now he has to stay in jail, so he can't interfere with the judicial process because we saw how much he interfered with the investigation process. And now we're afraid he's going to interfere with the judicial process. And these are not good reasons to keep people in jail, in my opinion, and in most functional democracies. as I said, if there's any actual concerns about these things, they simply put restraining orders on him. They don't have to keep him behind bars. Now, part of the accusations against Mayor Keshet is that they say that he exploited his position of authority as mayor in order to take advantage of these women. And I would like to challenge that. I think that that's a very shaky accusation. I will grant that in certain circumstances that this argument could be more convincing. For example, one of the main reasons that the religious community are reluctant to send our daughters to the army is because in an army framework, a young woman could be under the direct command of a male officer. And in that framework, so there could be exploitation, and there were instances like that. If you know a few Israelis, I'm sure you've heard stories of things that have gone on, unfortunately, over the years in the army, when you had this unhealthy situation. And therefore, we say, well, national service, and even national service, which we're in favor of for women, that also, you don't want them to be directly under the control of a male, but you want to have ideally a woman, or at the very least, the man, it should be someone who's known to be a reputable and upstanding person. So that could be the idea of this power relationship leading to some sort of opening for exploitation. There is an element of that, but I think here it's way overblown, and I think this is part of the problem with the approach of the Israeli Parliament today. And I know that this is their approach because first of all, they're taking this approach in the Keshet case, and to say that by virtue of the fact that he was the mayor and they weren't, and they were either a city worker or someone coming to the city for some business matter, so therefore he's automatically wrong. And I have a friend I spoke to yesterday who works for a large contractor which is doing a large public works project in one of the large cities of Israel, and he told me that recently they also had this training where they talked to him about these issues, the exploitation in the workplace issues, and they said if you're in a position of power, you're automatically wrong. You're automatically wrong if there's some complaint later. That's essentially what they said, and that's the assumption, that if there's any complaint, then it's the person in power. It could be a man, it could be a woman, doesn't really matter. You could have a woman mayor or whatever it might be, same thing. So they're automatically wrong, and I think that's a little overdrawn, because at a certain point you have to say that people have to take responsibility. That is to say, if someone chooses to do something with someone else, so they could also say no, even if the other person is suggested to them. Let's take an example. In America, those of us who remember long enough, a few decades back, close to 30 years ago, there was an American president, and he was accused of having a improper relationship with one of the interns in the White House. And this became known because this intern called her friend, and her friend called her friend, and called the newspaper, whoever it might be, after this had gone on for many months. And then the other party, who wasn't the same party as this president, so they made a big deal of this, and because later there was a grand jury investigation, they said he perjured himself because he said he didn't have relations with her, and he was a very smart man. He actually said he said, I didn't have sexual relations with her, I didn't have SDX with her, but and now because he was being very particular, because even though most people would describe what they did as some sort of intimate interaction, he felt it wasn't technically a relation, so he said, I'm not lying. But the point here is that simply this woman chose to have this affair with the president for weeks, months, and they were giving books to each other and writing to each other, etc. And then at some point in the end, she starts to tell her friends about it. I mean, this is not, you have to take responsibility. You could say no. You can say, no, Mr. President, I'm not interested. Or who knows who started even. But I'm saying in that case, in any case, in any interaction, the party who consents has the ability also not to consent, to say no. And I think then the fact that if there was here, I don't know what went on here or not, and it could be nothing went on here, but if anything went on here, then it seems to me likely that as this article says, the mayor supposedly says that anything that happened, if there was any hugs or anything, so that was with consent. And then to later say that was to claim that was somehow exploitation, I think is a little inappropriate. There was this similar case which I always mentioned with the president of Israel, Moshe Katsav, who sat 5 years in jail because his previous secretary, when he was the minister of tourism, so they had some affair, it seems, but she later claimed that she was raped twice. I don't know how you let that happen, but that's what she claimed. And the judges in the case, including the Supreme Court judge and the Arab Supreme Court judge who heard the appeal, they agreed. They said, oh yeah, we believe her and not him. And it was rape, it wasn't consensual, which I don't know how they know that, but in their wisdom they felt they knew that. And so that he sat in jail for 5 years. And I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that people have to take responsibilities for their actions. One more point I want to make, based on this article, which I said I suggest you all read. I typed it out here from the internet, or I printed it out. It could be that all these accusations are spurious completely. I don't know, but I have a suspicion that it's a possibility, based on what it says here, that one of the reasons the genius police from Lahav 433, who don't manage to put any mafiosos behind bars but are spending their time on hugging mayors, they said that these women who supposedly got jobs, these big jobs in the area, like being a corona monitor or being an assistant in a kindergarten. So later they were dismissed from their jobs, and they weren't for no reason. And they were simply called in. They said they're not my team. And then so the genius police said that they actually went back and looked at their records, and there was nothing there to indicate that they weren't my team. And that therefore this indicates that they were simply thrown out because they weren't zorem, they weren't going along with the mayor anymore. So, well, that's their interpretation. I find it very tenuous. I find a better explanation to be that maybe these women, for whatever reasons, weren't my team. And after they lost their jobs, and in their anger at the mayor, they decided to take might have been an innocent hug, which they agreed to at the time, and turn it into a exploitation. And I find that much more likely than the police explanation. In any case, thank you for listening, and we'll hopefully be continuing with this important issue.